Hello, Marisa. I'm going to teach you a really exciting skill today. I know how much you love blankets, especially in the wintertime. Some blankets need to be assembled before using them, and learning how to do this can be tricky. In order to assemble a no-sew blanket successfully, you have to listen closely and keep your eyes on me in my demonstration. If you can learn how to assemble the no-sew blanket, you will be rewarded with the opportunity to use it to keep warm during our afternoon movie. Before we start, I just wanted to be sure that you know how to be a successful learner. Tell me, how did I instruct you to listen?
Closely.
Exactly. Should you be watching my demonstration?
Yes.
Excellent job. I'm glad you remember how to be a successful learner. Can you tell me what blankets are used for?
To stay warm.
That's right. Can you tell me how many pieces of fleece fabric you need to assemble a no-sew blanket?
2 pieces.
Awesome. You need 2 pieces. How long does each piece have to be?
2 yards.
Correct. Each piece of fleece fabric needs to be 2 yards long. Great job. Now let's learn how to assemble the no-sew blanket. In order to assemble the no-sew blankets, you must have the necessary items. I will tell you the items that you need. You will need 2 pieces of fleece fabric cut 2 yards each, scissors, a tape measure, and a black Sharpie marker. You have to make sure you have enough room on the floor to assemble the blanket. Marisa, please tell me the items that you need in order to assemble the no-sew blanket.
2 pieces of fleece fabric cut 2 yards each, a tape measure, Sharpie, and scissors.
Great job. Should you assemble the no-sew blankets on a bed?
No, it should be on the floor with enough space.
Excellent. Glad to remember that the fleece fabric needs to be flat on the floor with enough space. Since we have all the materials we need, I will tell you how to assemble no-sew blankets. When I am sure that you understand the process, I will demonstrate it. Listen carefully. First, put 1 piece of fleece fabric on the floor wrinkle-free. Then put the second piece of fleece fabric on top of the first piece of the fleece fabric wrinkle-free, making sure they line up. Next, measure with a tape measure each corner 3 inches in length and mark a dot with a Sharpie, and 3 inches in height and mark a dot with a Sharpie. After, cut to each dot with the scissors on each corner and remove the excess materials. Then, pick one side to start. Measure with the tape measure how long each side is. From left to right, mark a dot with a Sharpie at the very bottom of the fleece fabric every 2 inches until you reach the end of that side. Next, from left to right, cut upwards 3 inches on each dot made both pieces of fleece fabric together until you reach the end of that side. From left to right at every 2-inch mark you cut, tie a double knot with both of the pieces of fleece fabric until you reach the end of that side. When this is done, complete these steps over again for each of the 3 other sides of the fleece fabric. After each side is complete, you will have finished learning how to make a no-sew blankets and will have assembled one as well. I will say this again. First, put 1 piece of fleece fabric on the floor wrinkle-free. Then, put the second piece of fleece fabric on top of the first piece of fleece fabric wrinkle-free, making sure they line up. Next, measure with a tape measure each corner 3 inches in length and mark it with a dot with a Sharpie, and 3 inches in height and mark it with a dot with a Sharpie. After, cut to each dot with the scissors on each corner and remove the excess materials. Then, pick one side to start. Measure with the tape measure how long each side is. From left to right, mark a dot with the Sharpie at the very bottom of the fleece fabric every 2 inches until you reach the end of that side. Next, from left to right, cut upwards 3 inches on each dot made. Both pieces of fleece fabric together until you reach the end of the side. From left to right, at every 2-inch mark you cut, tie a double knot with both pieces of the fleece fabric until you reach the end of that side. When this is done, complete these steps over again for each of the 3 other sides of the fleece fabric.
So, step 1, you take the piece of fleece fabric and put it down on the floor wrinkle-free. Take the second piece of the fleece fabric and place it on top of the first fleece fabric wrinkle free, making sure they line up. And then measure the corners of the fleece fabric 3 inches in length and in height, and cut to each dot. You have to dot it with the Sharpie, and then cut each corner to each dot and remove the excess fabric. Then measure, then pick a side to measure it, and mark every 2 inches at the very bottom with the Sharpie. When you get to the end of the side, start at the from left to right and cut up from the dot to the 3-inch mark from the corners, and complete that throughout the whole side. And then when you're done with that on that one side, take the 2 pieces of fabric and double knot them together from left to right, and then repeat those.
Great job, Marisa. When I put the first piece of fleece fabric on the floor, do I make sure it is wrinkle-free? Yes. How do I know? Because I placed the first piece of fleece fabric on the floor wrinkle-free. Marisa, when I put the first piece of fleece fabric on the floor, do I make sure it's wrinkle-free?
Yes.
How do I know?
Because you placed the piece of fabric on the floor wrinkle-free.
That's correct. First, put the first piece of fleece fabric on the floor wrinkle-free. Marisa, once the first piece of fleece fabric is on the floor wrinkle-free, do I measure 3 inches in length and height on each corner and mark it with a Sharpie?
No.
That is correct. I put the second piece of fleece fabric on the top of the first piece of fleece fabric, wrinkle-free, making sure they line up. Tell me, once I put the second piece of fleece fabric on top of the first piece of fleece fabric, wrinkle-free, do I cut each dot and remove the excess materials?
No. You have to measure out the dots first.
That's correct. First you measure 3 inches in length and mark it with the Sharpie marker, and 3 inches in height and mark it with the Sharpie marker. Tell me, once I measure 3 inches in length and mark it with the Sharpie marker, and 3 inches in height and mark it with the Sharpie marker, do I measure the side of fleece fabric and mark at the very bottom 2 inches with the Sharpie marker?
No, you have to cut out the corners first.
That is correct. I cut upwards to each dot, height and length, on each corner and remove the excess materials. Tell me, once I do this, do I cut upwards on the 2-inch dots I made along the sides of the fleece fabric?
No, you need to measure them first.
That is correct. First I piece a side of the fleece fabric and measure it with a tape measure. Mark the fleece fabric at the very bottom with a black Sharpie marker at every 2 inches until you reach the end of that side. Next, do I tie double knots with the 2 pieces of fleece fabric?
No, you have to cut out the 2 inches up to the 3-inch mark from the corners.
That is correct. You have to cut upwards to the 3-inch mark on the 2-inch dots made at the bottom of the fleece fabric until you reach the end of the side. Last, do I tie knots with the both of the fleece fabrics and cut 2-inch pieces?
Yes.
Awesome. I think that we're ready to try it. Remember, when I assemble a no-sew blanket, I need enough space on the floor. First, put 1 piece of fleece fabric on the floor wrinkle-free. Then, put the second piece of fleece fabric on top of the first piece of fleece fabric wrinkle-free, making sure they line up. Next, measure with a tape measure at each corner 3 inches in length and mark it with a Sharpie, and 3 inches in height and mark it with a Sharpie. After, cut to each dot with the scissors on each corner and remove the excess materials. Then, pick one side to start. Measure with a tape measure how long the side is. From left to right, mark a dot with the Sharpie at the very bottom of the fleece fabric every 2 inches until you reach the end of that side. Next, from left to right, cut upwards to the 3-inch mark. From left to right, At every 2-inch mark, cut tie a double knot with both pieces of fleece fabric until you reach the end of that side. When this is done, complete these steps over and over again. Okay, now I'm going to assemble the no-sew blanket with your help. First, I am placing one piece of fleece fabric on the floor, wrinkle-free. What do I do next?
Place the second fleece fabric on top of the first one, making sure they line up.
That is correct. What's next?
Measure the corners 3 inches in length and height and mark them with a dot from the Sharpie.
Great job, that is right. Now that the corners are measured, what do I do next?
Cut up to the dots on each corner and remove the excess fabric.
That's right. What's next?
You pick a side and measure the side and make a dot with a Sharpie every 2 inches.
You got it, Marisa. You sound like you're really getting it. What do I do next?
You cut upwards on each mark you made at every 2 inches up to the 3-inch mark of every corner, until you reach the end of the side of the blanket.
That's great, Marisa. What do I do next?
You tie the 2 pieces of fabric together with a double knot from left to right until you finish that side of the blanket.
You got it, Marisa. What is the last step?
To repeat the steps again.
Now that we have put together the no-sew blanket, can you remind me of the process?
So first step is take the fleece fabric and put it on the floor with no wrinkles. Take the second piece of fleece fabric and put it on top of the first one with no wrinkles, making sure that they line up. Then measure each corner 3 inches in length and in height and mark with a dot from a Sharpie marker. Then cut towards the dots on each side to get rid of the excess fabric. Then measure the side of the blanket that you want to start on and put a dot with the Sharpie marker at the bottom of the fleece every 2 inches. And then from left to right, cut upwards every 2 inches to the 3-inch mark on the corners. And do that until you finish that side of the blanket. And then start on the left-hand side again and tie with a double knot both of the fabrics together until you reach the end of the that side of the blanket.
Awesome job, Marisa. Now that the blanket is assembled, you may use it during the class movie today. Okay, Marisa, you did a great job learning how to assemble the no-sew blanket. Tomorrow, we are going to learn how to make a blanket by sewing 2 materials together.
Yay.
Now that we have learned how to put together the no-sew blanket, let me ask you a question. Do you cut the corners of the blankets before putting them on the floor and lining them up?
No.
How do you know?
Because you lay the pieces of fabric down first, and then the second one on top with no wrinkles, and then measure out the corners of the blanket.
That's right, Marisa. You got it.